When I was in college, as a server at a restaurant primarily known for its breakfast food, Ron Swanson style. Bacon on eggs on pancakes, Bloody Marys so stacked they were garnished with a cheeseburger. The works. It was a popular place, located right downtown, and I was accustomed to having a larger section in the restaurant due to my experience and general affinity for serving. Some people get it, some people don't. With such a good reputation, the restaurant brought in lots of newcomers, travelers, and whoever had heard good things about our food. Looking back now, I have served more faces than I can remember, made more change than I can count, and recovered from long shifts via binge eating and flipping through channels many more nights than I would like to admit. But hey, it paid the bills. I was in college and I needed the extra income. However, not everyone that came to eat at the restaurant was a newbie. We had regulars, people who had their orders down to a T or just need to stop by and grab a piece of pie after a busy day. To go even further, there were even customers who came in for my service. Not to get too egotistical, but I was good at my job and my charisma charmed people away from the monotony of other servers in the food industry for sure. Besides the college alumni that came through for my university's basketball games, and the younger college students who often stopped by for comfort food after ripping a bong, there were only a few regulars I still remember today. One in particular was a woman who went by Mbel. I remember serving her for the first time during a very busy day shift. My section was packed, and I had forgotten some guy's extra side of breakfast potatoes, just as I noticed my new customer. She flashed me a grin as we made eye contact. As this happened, I thought it was odd that she was sitting all alone at a booth. Everyone around her was of a party of at least 2 or more. But in any case, I shoved my other task aside for a moment to greet her and let her know I would be with her shortly, to which she responded with a lopsided grin. That's when I noticed how particular she seemed. It was as if the restaurant were a painting, and opposed to being part of it, she seemed like a separate entity laid upon the canvas. Her pale silhouette popped out against the wood frame of the booth, as her dark hair and eyes devoured the room. But perhaps the most notable trait she had were her teeth. They were so bright and shiny, I could almost see my reflection in them. Quite distracting, really. After refilling waters and coffees at my other tables, I lapped back around to her booth, gave her my introduction, told her the specials, and asked if she wanted anything right away. She looked up from her menu thoughtfully, before closing it, and meeting my expecting gaze. "I would like a steak. Rare, please." I was admittedly a bit flustered from her order. It seemed a bit absurd that this individual, so otherworldly, would want a steak of all things. Then again, maybe it would have been weird if she ordered anything else. I continued with her order, asking if she would like any sides, to which she shook her head slowly. "Just the steak." I remember walking away from her table and noticing how time seemed to speed up again. I hadn't noticed when I was at her table, but taking her order felt like several hours. It seemed like my new customer was at time's wayside. My other tables this day were particularly needy, so another server did me the solid of running her food. When I finally caught up, I headed over to her table to see if she needed anything. I was surprised as I approached her table, however, that her food was already boxed up. I hadn't seen her take a bite. "I would like my bill now, if I could," she seemed to say, yanking me away from confusion, although I just couldn't be sure if she even moved her lips when she stated her request. "Of course, let me grab it for you." As I tore my eyes away from hers, I felt the same thing happen again. Time seemed to catch up to where it was before. Maybe, I thought, my head was just fuzzy from all the days in a row I had worked. Once I stopped at her table, she was grinning at me again. Gosh, she was stunning. "My name is Mbel. Thank you for everything," she said. I, flustered, returned her polite remarks before leaving the check on the table. I had a very hard time meeting her eyes the last time. She was gone then before I could notice. She had paid in cash, leaving no other proof of her stay. I pocketed the change, not giving it much of a second thought. I was busy, after all. Some weeks passed, as did my shifts. Class, work. I had a routine, but I didn't mind it. My work was justifiable. I was doing the grind like everyone else. I worked basically whenever I was free. Day shifts, night shifts, busy shifts, slow shifts. And I wasn't strategic when I worked. Just a dependable worker, rather. The days blurred and blended together. But payday reminded me why I spent time in a constant state of motion. Mbel came back again not longer than a week after our first encounter, and was coincidentally placed in the same booth as before, sitting in the same seat by herself. Her clothing wasn't particularly flashy or outlandish, but the normalcy of her outfit contrasted with her striking, floating features. She seemed to belong in some place more high-end than this joint. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. She inevitably ordered the same thing again, a steak. And she ordered steak again the next week she came in. Then again, every time after that, as her visits became more regular. The weird thing is that she always got sat in the same booth. She always came alone, and I always served her. Come to think of it, I never saw her get sat in my section, and I never saw her leave, and I, believe it or not, never saw her actually eat the steak when it arrived to her table. She always had it boxed up by the time I had gotten around to checking up on her, and when I brought her the check, she always paid in cash. It was precisely systematic, for lack of a better term. I remember the last day Mbel came in. The restaurant was very slow, and we were closing soon. I was the only server on, and was wrapping up some of my side work early to save time, when I felt her stare burning through the back of my head, as I emptied coffee grounds into the garbage. Now, this is really odd, as I do not recall the action of putting down the coffee filter and walking over to her table. There is a break in my memory as I recall now, but I do recall being in front of her at her table, as she placed her regular order. Leave it to the comfortability, as being her regular server and the emptiness of the restaurant, but I felt courageous enough to entertain conversation with Mbel. I wasn't sure what to ask, really. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was just a customer getting food. Some people just like to get the same thing. Sometimes people don't have a huge appetite. That's all I should have assumed. And I had. Until this time. I remember looking into her eyes as she smiled at me. "You have such nice teeth," I muttered, simultaneously feeling nervous at my remark. I didn't want to be rude or a pervert. She didn't seem to mind. "Thank you," she said, smiling wider, revealing very, very red gums. I continued to meet her gaze, and honestly don't remember saying anything more after the teeth compliment. What felt like, I kid you not, 100 years seemed to pass. It was like time was a rubber band, and it was stretched as far as it could go. And we said literally nothing to each other. I couldn't look away. That's when I noticed my peripherals fading out. The floor was literally crumbling beneath me. Looming figures cropped up in every direction, replacing the tables and windows of the restaurant, with Mbel in center focus. This time she was not nearly as stunning. Her eyes were black beads, and her mouth was agape, revealing several rows of teeth behind the front row. I couldn't tell if she was moving closer or further away. My bones felt as if they were being sucked dry. I was crumpling in every sense of the word. I didn't feel I was ever going to come back to my job, to my sense of normalcy. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I couldn't even feel my own body anymore. It was as if it didn't exist. Nothing existed but black beads and teeth. I woke up on the floor of the restaurant. Flustered, I checked my watch. 3:13 a.m. Using what seemed like Hercules strength, I pulled myself up to my feet with the help of the booth Mbel had sat on so many times before. Only this time there was no Mbel. The table was cleared, all, save for a few drops of blood on the booth tabletop. I was in a rush at this point. I couldn't think clearly. I was scared and out of sorts. I didn't even bother to finish my side work. I just wiped off the table, turned off the lights, and went home. I was quick to grab my mail before heading up to my apartment. With heavy eyelids and shaking hands, I sifted through my bills and soliciteds before coming upon a piece of cardstock, handwritten in red ink. I knew I shouldn't have looked at it. I knew who it was from, but I couldn't help myself. Hesitantly, my eyes glued to the message that stated, "Have a nice time, Mbel." I nearly broke the elevator with hyperventilations. After letting myself into my apartment, I shredded the cardstock into tiny pieces and threw them away. I couldn't sleep that night. I called in sick to work and just laid low. The last thing I needed was to see Mbel or whoever that was showing up to my work and screwing up my psyche again. There are no words. After a couple of weeks, I returned to work, going about my business. I asked my coworkers if they ever remember someone coming into that restaurant that matched Mbel's description, to which everyone said no. Not surprisingly, I asked my manager to switch up my section, just so the booth Mbel liked to sit at wouldn't be mine to take. I could never look at that booth after what happened. I tried to let the images of that night and her little letter fade away. I didn't want to remember the eternity that passed whenever Mbel came around. I just wanted normalcy. I cannot know whether every meeting with Mbel was a figment of my imagination or a deliberate private encounter that brushed the surface of hell. Her beauty was a veil of something far more menacing. But my recollections grow stronger now every day, which is why I wanted to write this. I hate to say it, but I have a feeling Mbel is going to pay me a visit again, whether I like it or not. Maybe I'm supposed to enjoy my time before she comes back again. I pray to God, however, that I am wrong. When I was in college, I was a server at a restaurant primarily known for its breakfast food, Ron Swanson style. Bacon on eggs on pancakes, Bloody Marys so stacked. Oh my God.